all Shrutidars in this temple, so we have dispensed with physical violence.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Let me begin by apologizing for being late. We just planned it incorrectly and we hit traffic. So this is Canto 3, Chapter 12.
31.
Verse 31, creation of the Kumaras and others. Tejasam api, tejasam api, tejiyasam apiyetam,
Tejiyasam apiyetam.
nasulokyam jagat guru,
Nasulokyam jagat guru.
yadvritam anutishtam vai,
Yadvritam vai.
yadvritam anutishtam vai,
Yadvritam antishtam vai.
lokashemaya kalpate,
Lokashemaya kalpate.
tejiyasam apiyetam,
Tejiyasam apiyetam.
nasulokyam jagat guru,
Nasulokyam jagat guru.
yadvritam anutishtam vai,
Yadvritam antishtam vai.
lokashemaya kalpate.
Lokashemaya kalpate.
So go right into the translation. Translation, this is Bhrigu. He's speaking to his father, Lord Brahma. Even though you are the most powerful being, this act does not suit you because your character is followed for spiritual improvement by people in general. Please repeat, even though you are the most powerful being,
Even though you are the most powerful being,
this act does not suit you
this act does not suit you
because your character is followed
Because your character is followed
for spiritual improvement
for spiritual improvements
by people in general.
by people in general.
Srila Prabhupada's purport, which is quite succinct. It is said that a supremely powerful living entity can do anything and everything he likes, and such acts do not affect him in any way. For example, the sun, the most powerful fiery planet in the universe, can evaporate water from anywhere and still remains powerful. The sun evaporates water from filthy places, and yet is not affected with the quality of the filth. Similarly, Brahma remains unimpeachable in all conditions. But still, since he is the spiritual master of the living entities, all living entities, his behavior and character should be so ideal that people will follow such sublime behavior and derive the highest spiritual benefit. Therefore, he should not have acted as he did. Om Agyantimirandasya Kinanjana Salakaya Chaksu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guru Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutala Swayam Bhuta Kadamahyam Vedati Svapadantika Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu
Nityananda
Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So, we are in a very, what we say, philosophical dilemma. Sometimes these things do appear, and they seem to be almost unsolvable or unanswerable. because you can answer it from different angles of vision and both are correct. That's the nature of spirituality. Absolute nature can be correct, although contradictory. Important to understand, because in the material world, something's either right or it's wrong. But in spiritual subject matters, especially transcendental subject matters, things can be more right, and completely right. And things can be apparently wrong, but right also. And something can be completely right, look right, and be completely, what we say, unacceptable. So we have that situation here. Brahma he's a great devotee. Srila Prabhupada's descriptions of Brahma have varied according to his various lectures. Sometimes he says Brahma is a pure devotee, other times he says he's not. So, then again, here we go. It's the different point. But in one take lecture, he's very emphatic that he's not a pure devotee. He's not a pure devotee. And he still has a desire to be one Brahma. So that's a tinge. But who can compare to his service? Tene Brahma Ida Yadi Kabuye. He was so powerful that he's born without a mother. He's called Ajja. Ajja means one is self-born, or directly born from the Supreme Personality of God. Now think about that in terms of comparing with other living entities. He's quite powerful. And he doesn't have a physical body. He has a subtle body. He doesn't have, his body is not made of gross elements. Earth, water, fire, he's made out of pure intelligence. Because intelligence is one of the eight elements. Buddhi is intelligence. 5 gross, 3 subtle. So the intelligence is also the subtle energy of the material energy. So that's his body. And when he appeared directly from the lotus navel of Karvanasya Vishnu. And in order for him to function, he simply performed austerities upon hearing the message directly spoken by the Supreme Lord, which was spoken twice. Tapa. You heard it once, then you heard it again. Tapa. Upon the second time he understood that before one can prepare oneself for going back to Godhead, tapasya is necessary. Without tapasya there is no bhakti. Knowledge in itself will never be realized unless there is tapasya. And then tapasya leads to what we say, devotional service. What is that tapasya? Following the instructions of the spiritual master in all aspects of those instructions. That's the main tapasya. So he performed tapasya. So what did he do? He simply meditated. He had the power to meditate on the Supreme Lord within his heart for 1,000 celestial years. We cannot calculate that in terms of earthly years. It's impossible. We can try to calculate it because each year is each day is it's 360 days each day. So each year you multiply in the same way. My calculations are not functioning right now. So I can't come up with a number, but the idea is that it's a long time. An incalculable long time. And upon finishing his meditation, he understood three things: who he was, what his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead was, and what was the service. And that service was to take the material energies, or the material elements, we say, created by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and to formulate them into the different manifestations and permutations and make up the material energy. Such a powerful service. The reason I'm explaining this, so one doesn't misunderstand Lord Brahma. People say, oh, Brahma chased after his daughter. And that's what this whole pastime is about. He came after his daughter for sex. And that's why he's being somewhat taken into account here. Of course, there were those who actually made fun of him, and they fell down. What was that? Who were they? Who actually criticized Brahma, and because of that criticism, they fell down from their spiritual life. Therefore, Marici and the sages are not criticizing, they're questioning. So this is important. Sometimes when one experiences a great soul doing something that may seem to be a little bit outside of the principles of devotional service, if one draws an immediate conclusion, it could be very offensive. It could cause one to fall down because of that. So the sages are not doing that. They gathered Marici together and they asked Marici, please ask Brahma what's going on. And so they did. They did. And Marici's speaking. And he's somewhat giving a little rebuke. He says, you know, you're the example for many because you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead within the universe. In that sense, he's the most powerful and very much influential in his service. Therefore, this is a bad example. This is a bad example. When devotees questioned Prabhupada about this, oh, Brahma chased after his daughter for sex life, Brahma says, Brahma's all right. Brahma's all right. He didn't want the devotees to find fault with Lord Brahma. But what is the example here? Brahma's actually teaching something. We might say there is a little discretion in his character, but is it a discretion or is it a message for all of us? The message is more important. That no matter who you are, no matter how elevated you are in your spiritual life, you still may fall down because of the attraction to the opposite sex. Sometimes people think, well, I'm safe. I'm chanting nice rounds, I'm fixed up, I'm not attracted anymore. That consciousness means that you're ready to fall down. Because the nature of the material energy is such that at any time, as Prabhupada said, like a razor's edge. He says when you're shaving with a razor, you must be very attentive, especially a sharp razor, which is the example. One should be very attentive, because if one is a little inattentive, there may be a cut, and therefore one slips. So the same way, therefore, devotees are conscious, cautious. Conscious of Krishna, cautious of not acting or speaking in such a way that one will be implicated by the material energy. And by not being implicated on the material energy, one makes fast progress in devotional life. One makes fast progress. So Brahma, he's an example for us to learn that, hey, who am I? And look at Lord Brahma. Even he apparently becomes victimized by the attraction to the opposite sex. So, but here, another example, this is a very, very interesting section because it has so many, when we say, important spiritual principles that are being enunciated here, that one's character is really the nature of how one judges one's personality. This is another point here. People will criticize Brahma because apparently there's a deviation in his character. And therefore the sages are concerned. And therefore, if people either follow his example and say it's all right because Brahma did it, or if they criticize Lord Brahma, either way, there's a discretion or there's an offense on their part. So, therefore the sages are concerned, because the sages are also interested in keeping religious principles, when we say foremost, within the existence, within the creation. So this is a very, very important. But Prabhupada says, Tejasam, Tejiyasam, Rajosaya. In a different place he says. What does that mean? That a great soul can apparently act a little bit, or does sometimes act outside of the regulative principle. They're not affected. They're not affected. Therefore, sometimes we see that. Therefore, there is two aspects of devotional service that one should consider in comparison to each other. One is called Anusharan, and another one is called Anuskaran. Anusharan means to follow in the footsteps, and Anuskaran means to imitate. So, Brahma, he did this, so I can also do this. Krishna has dances with so many girls in Rasa dance, so I can also do my village program too. There are people, incarnation, supposedly, who want to imitate Krishna in that same way. But as Prabhupada said, imitation is always bad. No, I'm sorry. Imitation is always wrong. Imitation is always wrong. Because the consciousness is different. The consciousness of a transcendental person and the consciousness of one who is not transcendental, although the activities may be the same, will produce a different result. I'll tell you a nice story. This illustrates something. Now, devotees couldn't do this, but Prabhupada did this. One time a very, respectable guest came to the temple. And Prabhupada welcomed him and said to the devotee who was with Prabhupada, he said, get him some Mahaprasad. So the devotee left and went into the pujari room to get Mahaprasad. And the offering had just gone on the altar. And the pujari was just coming off the altar after making the offering. So the devotee requested, the pujari said, well, it just went on, you'll have to wait until it becomes prasad. So the devotee went back to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, it's now being offered. Prabhupada said, get the Mahaprasad. He was insistent, he didn't want the guest to wait. So the devotee came back, and this time the pujari was chanting his Gayatri, sitting outside after he made the offering. And the devotee walked right on the altar and took the prasad and walked off. You could imagine what the pujari thought. What's going on here? So immediately he drops his Gayatri and starts chasing after the devotee with the Maha. And they both arrived at Prabhupada at the same time. But so, of course, the pujari was acting right, and the other devotee was acting right. And Prabhupada was acting right. Right? Everyone was right. That's devotional life. So sometimes, even apparently, when you try to do the right thing. So Prabhupada had that facility to say, okay, do that. But if someone else would say to do that, they might be offensive. So you can't imitate Prabhupada. One time Prabhupada was in Calcutta, and they were invited devotees, a large group of devotees were involved with coming to one respectable life member's house. I think he was a life member, maybe not. They were there for evening prasad, so it was a nice feast. And then the devotees were getting prasad, and then they looked, and the pakoras were onion pakoras. So one devotee said to Prabhupada, "These are onions." Prabhupada said, "Never mind. Never mind, take it." Because he didn't want to offend the guest. So what apparently can be done by a pure devotee cannot necessarily be done by everyone. You can suspend the rules. So, and sometimes people say, well, Prabhupada doesn't chant his rounds. Sometimes his devotees would see Prabhupada, they wouldn't see him chant. And then they would say, well, they would find some fault. But Prabhupada was always chanting 24 hours a day. When he chanted on beats or he chanted now. One time, one guest said to Prabhupada in a very kind of uplifting way, "Prabhupada, you're always chanting you're always chanting Hare Krishna?" Prabhupada said, "Put your ear on my back." And the man did, and he could hear the Maha Mantra going on inside of Prabhupada. Going on in his heart constantly. So he may not chant on beads all the time, but he's always chanting. So one thing, oh, Prabhupada didn't chant on his beads, I cannot chant. I shouldn't chant on my beads either. But then, so there's the difference. So Brahma is the same thing. But Brahma appears to be digressing from religious principles or even committing some sinful act. But he's not to be taken into account. But on the other side, the sages are questioning Brahma because your example will be followed by others. So even though many times Srila Prabhupada would want to do something, or sometimes when he would go into ecstasy, he would restrain his ecstasies because he knows maybe others either would misunderstand or try to imitate. So in order to restrain the ecstasies, he did that in order to show proper example. So there are many examples where a great soul will not act against the religious principles because he knows others will, surreptitiously imitate and therefore fall down. But one has to know that principle. One has to know that principle in relationship to devotees, because if you don't know that principle, you might try to imitate. Prabhupada drank 7-Up, we can drink 7-Up too. That's what devotees used to say, Prabhupada did it. Prabhupada did this, and he used to do that. Well, in certain cases, these things go on. So here, Brahma's apparently acting outside. The Prabhupada says Brahma remains unimpeachable in all conditions. But still, he should not have done what he did. He still not have done what he did because others will criticize, and therefore they fall down because they criticize. But Prabhupada was really strong. When the devotees were speaking about this in discussion with him, that we should not criticize Brahma, he's all right. Prabhupada became a little angry also, seeing that the devotees might think that Brahma was a conditioned soul, and therefore he's actually attracted by his daughter. So, but at the same time, sometimes these things do happen. So, we might say, in another sense, another size, precept is higher, Example is higher than precept. How you act is more important than what you say. Your activities speak louder than words. One who wants to know religious principles must follow the process given by the pure devotees of the Lord. They teach both by words and by example. But example is there. There's that story in named Prabhupada. Perhaps you haven't seen the book yet, but Mukunda Maharaj has released his book, Miracle in Second Hand. How many of you read it? Anybody read it yet? It's an amazing book. It's all about the early days of Prabhupada in 26 Second Hand. It's fantastic. Miracle in Second Hand. He just reveals a lot of the old days. It's real full of sweet nectar. So Mukunda was with Prabhupada, and they were sitting in the car. And Prabhupada had a date. He was eating a date. He took a bite out of the date. He gave it to Mukunda. Mukunda loved it. He was thinking, what is this? Someone bites on it, and then he gave it to him. Nobody knew anything. So he said, all right. So he took a bite out of it, and then he gave it back to Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, never mind. Didn't take it back. So sometimes we find ourselves acting wrongly, although we think we're acting rightly. Therefore, what is the foundation? Anukulena pratikul. One should know what is favorable and what is unfavorable. It's no excuse. If one makes a mistake, it's excusable. But one should not continue making mistakes. It's like we don't point our feet towards the deities. We should know it. We come. Right? Because the back of your feet is considered to be offensive. If you point it again towards a devotee or towards a deity, it's an offense. If we sit with our backs towards the deities, it's also an offense. So there's many things that are given in the Shastras that are fundamental to the day-to-day practice of devotion. So temple life is tough. Temple life is tough. Because you're directly in Krishna's house. You're in the house of the king. And so you have to be ideal with living in the house of the king, because, the king's house is always ideal, because it belongs to the king. Krishna is the king. So therefore, living in the house of the king means ideal in all aspects of devotional life. In behavior, in facility, everything has to be ideal. So, and therefore one should know what are the principles that are conducive to spiritual practice. And what is the most important principle? Everyone knows that, right? Krishna, what's the most important?
Remember Krishna.
Yeah. Never forget Krishna. Prabhupada said, whatever spiritual activity you're doing, this is the foundation for everything. Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. And then whatever you're doing becomes, what we say, perfectly acceptable. Even if there's some mistake in the material aspect of the offering. If you remember Krishna, or you're trying to serve Krishna with devotion, that is also remembering Krishna. And that is true. Okay. Any questions? Madhavendra Puri? Prabhu?
I always thought that aside from Govardhan and Shalagram Shilas, a deity has to be installed by a Pratishta ceremony. But one devotee was telling me that the deities in Ohio, if you don't install them but you worship them for a certain length of time, they're considered installed after a while. So I didn't.
And there's two. I actually heard that from people who know. There's two aspects of installation. One is called the Pratishtha ceremony, the other is called time. And if a deity is worshipped long enough, according to the principles, that deity becomes installed. Krishna's Krishna. It's not like there's more than one Krishna. Well, for worship, there is principles. An installation is there for Radha and Krishna. But in certain cases, if long-term worship, according to the principles of worship, goes on, that this deity is considered to be worshipful according to the rules. It's installed. But we don't generally go for that as an option. That may happen because of circumstance. When there's no one to do the Pratishtha ceremony, and there's a need for the deity to do that.
I was thinking, for example, in ISKCON, deities, especially those installed by Prabhupada, installation is like a spiritual contract. You're agreeing to perform 6 artiks and 6 offerings a day, and if you don't, it's an offense. If you just decide you don't feel like doing an artik or an offering, that's an offense.
Right.
The deity. So if you just have a deity and you don't install them, but after a while they're considered installed.
And you start to follow, is that offense? Yeah.
Or then is the person who put the deities there, he gets to determine how many artiks. The one who installs determines what level of service is to be maintained, and then it's not offensive.
I think that in terms of determination should be determined on persons who are, their responsibility is to make that determination, whether it's the GBC or the temple president. I think it's not done, when we say whimsically. It has to be done. And once you set the standard, then you follow that.
And it's an offense if you
Yeah.
go below that standard.
Yeah. Or if you go below it without, approval from others, sometimes we have to lower the standard due to circumstances. Prabhupada did that even now. But that's only an emergency. If it's not an emergency, then one has to do whatever they can to keep and maintain that standard. And deity worship is really quite strict. It's super strict. The principles of deity worship are 2. But there's a third principle that makes the first 2 workable. It's called simplicity. No, it's called cleanliness and punctuality. Things should be what we say revolutionary clean. That means not only the temple, but the whole temple. Prabhupada said the whole body is the temple of the Lord, not just the deity. Yeah, it says the whole body makes up the temple of the body, the whole temple makes up the body of the Lord. So any dirty places is actually keeping Krishna's body unclean. Any part. Whether it's the basement or roof or whatever. Yeah. And when it's there, it's there in the database. You can look it up. Prabhupada said, every inch of the temple is the body of the Lord. That's his exact words. Everything should be revolutionary clean. And the other thing is cleanliness, punctuality. Everything should be super on time. And when the deities worship nicely with cleanliness and punctuality, you'll see that the devotees are happy. Things go on nicely. Shadows first class. Simplicity allows for these 2 things. If we get too elaborate in the deity worship, and then we try to maintain cleanliness and punctuality, when sometimes situations change, like some temples had 60 devotees, and then they have 10, and all of a sudden, how do you keep the standard? So it becomes a little more difficult. But still, the standard must be maintained. So keep it simple, but keep it clean and keep it on time. We did that in Chicago last year or 2. The deity worship has been really first class. The whole atmosphere in the temple has really changed tremendously. It's important because Krishna is there. He's there. Yes.
Maharaj, I have a question. Maharaj, I have
Does that
heard.
answer your question? Yeah, once you establish the standard, then you can't go below it without getting a reaction. So therefore, it takes some thoughtful discretion before you establish the standard. Prabhupada gave us a certain standard, but some temples are different than others. Some have 4 offerings and artis, some have 5, some have 6. But I don't think we can go lower than 4. You got Mangal Artik, a Raj Boga, you got what else? 1 in the afternoon at 4, it's 3 when they wake up, and then the last one, Shayana Artik. When I was in New Vrindavan, we had 6. We had the 9 o'clock breakfast offering too. I think you have that here also. That's 5. And then we had another one at 6 o'clock. That was 6. Each of these artis and offerings have a particular Sanskrit term to describe, because they're all part of the whole Pancharatrika system. But at least 4 has to be there. Yeah.
So if a temple is in an emergency situation where there are much less Brahmins, then one can temporarily adjust the standard, but then with
You
the
should
aim.
talk to Sri Kalacha. He says minimum 10 Brahmins in the temple to worship the deity. Minimum.
In situations in which deities were installed 30 years ago, and now
He's strict. He's pretty strict. He's our minister of deity worship in this kind. Some people get scared of him because he's really strict. But it's good. We wanted to install Gaurnitai deities. He said, you got 10 Brahmins? What's it for Gaurnitai? We don't need 10 Brahmins. He was pretty strong. So we had 4 Brahmins anyway. Still. But for Radha Krishna, Gaurnitai are merciful. They excuse offenses. Jagannath, a little less strict, a little more strict. Radha Krishna, can't play around with. Very strict. Radha Gopi Baba is very kind. Yes?
Maharaj, Maharaj, I had heard in some lectures, I have not read it in a book, about every living entity started his journey away from the Lord by taking the position of Lord Brahma. Yeah, can you explain this, because it's very bewildering that.
The Prabhupada says that. You fall to the flesh position of Brahma, then you go all the way down from there. It's a statement by Prabhupada. It's also written somewhere. But then again, when you describe the evolutionary process, it says the living entity begins from the aquatics. Aquatics are the lowest, and from the aquatics then comes, trees, plants, insects. The flies are the last insect before the creepers, before the birds. Before the birds, the flies. After the flies, the birds. After the birds, the beasts. After the beasts, the human beings. So you might, again, you have to really take that with a little bit of a... Anyway, don't worry about it. Even if you were Lord Brahma, don't think you are now. It's all finished now. Yes, Chaturmani.
Thank you.
I'm sorry I missed your question.
I was wondering if you could go over those 2 terms again regarding imitating and following.
Anusharan,
Anusha.
Anuskaran. Anusharan means to follow in the footsteps, which means that you try to perform devotional service in the same mood as a great soul. Not imitating their activities, but serving in the same way they do. And also, serving them, by glorifying them. You want to be Mother Yasoda? Okay, so you serve in the same mood as Mother Yasoda. You pray to Mother Yasoda for her mercy. You hear about Mother Yasoda, you read about Mother Yasoda, you glorify Vatsana Ras. So one can do that. And it's recommended to do that because one's Istadeva, one's internal mood starts to develop by this process. Externally, we're doing service. Internally, we cultivate a certain mood of devotion and following in the footsteps of the great personality. That's Anusharan. That's recommended. Anuskara means I want to do what they do. They do this, I do that. They do the same thing. Prabhupada said everyone is hogs, dogs, camels, and asses, so when I give a lecture, I just repeat Prabhupada. And the audience walks out, You don't have the purity to say the same thing in the same mood, If you love everybody, then you can call them a hog and a dog. But if you don't love everybody, you can't. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. Hare Krishna. Yes, TP. You have a question? No? I thought you had your hand up before. Okay, is that all? Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada
Jai.
Srila Bhagavatam
Jai.
Brahma Ki
Jai.